All right, so let us start. So, in the last day, we discussed about the Linux basics. We created a machine in AWS. We discussed about the importance of being yourself comfortable with the Linux command line, which is very important because we are going to use Linux command line a lot. So that's why. And then we discussed about the Linux file system, how exactly some basics of Linux file system, how exactly the Linux file system look like. We discussed about the slash folder and different folder that come under slash, and that directory tree is something we discussed about. And then we discussed about some basic Linux commands that deal with the file systems, right? ls command, cd, cd command we didn't see, ls command and touch command, different Linux commands we discussed. And then I told you how you can do the self learning by searching in Google or using the man command. You can do such kind of things. Then we discussed about file permissions. We discussed about what is a Linux user and what is a Linux group, and how you can create usages, and how you can give file permission, how you can assign file permission to different usages. This is actually very important in Linux. When you run your applications, it is always your responsibility to make sure that your application or your process or different files in your application, you should give permission to the people who deserve to have the permission. Limit the permission in such a way that only the authorized people get the permission what they need. Do not add extra permission to your files and folders. Assign it to those users who need permission, right? And then we discussed about softwares, web applications, and database. Okay, we didn't. This is something we have to. Then I think we discussed about some assignment yesterday. So when you get a chance, you finish that 50 Linux commands. And today we will talk about software basics, some basics about web applications and databases. So first I will give you an overview about softwares. You already know what a software is. So there is nothing that need to be come from my side, right? But let me make sure that you are in the same page about what a software is. So what's a software? A software is something that you can that is executable. So a software is something that you execute, and it consists of a lot of program. It consists of a set of programs, and you with knowing or not knowingly, you are executing that software, executing different programs inside the software. So you can take any example of any software that you currently use. Think about your Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word application, or the Excel application, or the Chrome browser, Firefox browser, calculator application, whatever application that you currently have installed on your laptop. It's a software. It's a software, and it is developed by some company or by Microsoft, or by some companies developed this software, and we are using that software. And this software was developed in such a way that it solve one of the problem what you are facing, right? For example, the calculator applications, you cannot add huge numbers or multiply them. Calculator help you do that, not just within less than few seconds. Or think about the Microsoft Word application. If you want to format some text or documentation, whatever you are writing, you want to format them in such a way that it is very easy to understand. People understand what are the headings, what are the points to be noted. The important point you can underline, you can make it bold. So then everyone who has the Microsoft Word software installed in their laptop, they can edit the document whatever you shared with them. So that's the purpose of Microsoft Word. So what I'm trying to say is every software is built for a purpose, and it consists of a set of programs, and every time you do something, some programs are getting executed in the background. And yes, those programs would need to store some data in the memory. They need to be executed by the CPU. So there comes the requirement of a CPU and a memory to execute those programs. And of course the program need to be initially stored inside a file system, which would be your hard disk. So basically, whatever software that you use, It consists of different programs, and all these programs need some CPU time, and they need some memory to store some temporary data, and some memory where they want to store the data permanently. So all these hardware resources are also a part of the software running process, right? Think about Microsoft Word. You open the Microsoft Word software and you're writing something. One of the things you made it, you want to create a heading, so you selected a text and click on the heading button, and that become the heading. And you want to make some text bold, some text italic, so all you do is you select the text, click some button, it become italics. But what actually happens is, in the background some programs are getting executed, and these programs would make some change in the UI, so that the text will look bold to you, or the text will look italics to you, and or underlined text or bold text, whatever it is. So it's a you can consider Microsoft Word to be a software that consists of different programs, and every time you do something, you try to write something, then internally the Microsoft Word is running some program that would take whatever you are typing in, take that and put that in a temporary memory in your RAM. And then after that, when you save the file, then some different program get executed, and that program will flush the data in the memory to the hard disk, and that is when the file gets stored inside the hard disk. And so a software always uses a hardware to run. You need some CPU time, and you need some memory, and some permanent memory, and some temporary memory where you want to store some temporary stuff. So a program or a software consists of a lot of that, and it all definitely depends on how complicated the operation that you are performing, how much CPU you need, how much memory you need, and how much disk space you need. All those things completely depends on what operation that you are performing, what is the exact, if you are saving a large file on your computer using Microsoft Word, probably if it is a very large file, then it might need more CPU and memory to complete that operation. But if it is a significantly small file, one-page document, it happens very fast. So it all depends on different factors. It depends on the data, it depends on the operation complexity, whatever you are executing, whatever operation you are executing, depend on various reasons. The complication and the time the program takes, or the memory program needs, or the CPU time the program takes, can vary depending on different factors, depending on, if you, for example, you want to add two numbers in your laptop. So you open the calculator application in your laptop, and then you add two numbers, the operation will complete in microseconds, right? But if you try to multiply some 10-digit numbers, two 10-digit number, and you want to multiply them, maybe it will take slightly more time than that. Maybe 100 times more time it takes if it is a multiplication operation. So it depends on what operation you are performing, how complicated it is. Sometimes you will see some application takes a lot of time to open in Windows, right? Some complicated software, when you try to open them, a lot of program need to get executed in the background, and a lot of UI need to be built for the front end, and all those operation takes time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time for a software, maybe seconds for the software to open. So it all depends on, softwares are complicated, softwares are simple, softwares are time consuming. So there are various types and complications that you come across when you deal with a software, right? So in this course, we are going to deal with a lot of softwares and applications. So we will talk about all these things in detail. So this is an overview I wanted to give about what is a software, right? And yeah, that's what it is. And we'll also talk about what is a web application. So let's talk about what is a web application. So let me ask you this question, right? Google.com, is it a software? Google.com is technically it is a software. Let me prove it to you. Software is something that provides you sometimes it provides you a graphical interface. So when you browse for Google.com, I can see a good looking web page. So I have a UI, and then it allows me to solve many of the problem that I am facing. I want to look for something on the internet. I want to search for uh, some keyword on the internet. I want to know what is the stock market and what is the different things I might want to search in detail. Every day I use Google for a lot of different operations, and it solve a lot of problems for me, and that's what software do, right? At the end, softwares are built for solving some of your problem, and Google actually solve a lot of my problem. I can get a lot of answers. Whatever I ask to Google, Google provides me a detailed documentation about whatever I am searching for, and it provides me a lot of information that I need. Think about Facebook. Facebook, when I log into Facebook, it allows me to connect with my friends, and I want to share some information about myself, or some information with everyone who is connected with me. I can create a post, and then I can actually interact with my friends on an online platform. So that is what Facebook is helping me with. So all this website and Amazon is helping me buying some product that I need for my home or for my personal purpose, whatever it is. It allows me to do something. So all these websites are also doing the job of a software, right? They are softwares, and they help, they solve some of your problem. LinkedIn, right? Lots of softwares that are websites. So and these are web applications. Any application that you browse on HTTP URL, we call them web applications. Google.com is a web application. Facebook.com is a web application. And so web applications is slightly different than a normal software in the way how they run, right? Obviously, one thing that you already know, you need internet to browse Google.com. So there comes some internet connectivity, and your browser is communicating with somebody else to get this Google.com website downloaded on the browser. So all those complex operations are taking place, and then maybe my browser is running some program, my some server that is sitting at the Google company that is also running some program for me. So let me prove it to you. So I browse for Google.com. All I did is I opened my browser. I browse for Google.com, and I got some web page. And where this web page is coming from? This web page is coming from some server that Google owns. Some server that could be located in some place in India. It could be in India, or it could be somewhere else. Most probably in India. It could be Mumbai, Hyderabad, or Delhi, some places in India. So my browser, I am sitting in Bangalore, and my browser in Bangalore connected to some server which is on the internet. It could be in Mumbai, and then that server responded to me with this web page. This Google logo is part of it, and this search box design is part of it, and these buttons are part of it, and all this text what I see in this browser, all those things got downloaded from a remote server. And then I can do something. I can just click here somewhere. I am clicking on the search box, and then some pop-up has come, and it is printing me some search history of mine, whatever I searched in Google before, and all those search results are appearing here. So looks like some programs got executed in the background as soon as I click this search button. And where did this program get executed? Actually, those programs get executed in my browser itself. Some program got executed in my browser itself, and whatever these things what you see are sometimes that I searched in the past today, and all these things are coming up as soon as I click this button. So my browser is executing some programs actually. Are the browsers capable to execute programs? Yes, most browsers, all browsers today are capable to execute JavaScript programs on the front end, and that's what happening. Some JavaScript program got executed, and as a result, it looked my browser cache, found the history, and it is giving me them as the suggestions. I can choose them, or I can type in whatever I want to type in, and then I can press enter. That is also possible. And assume now I search for test, I search for some keyword, then I click for Google search, then I am getting a lot of search results. Of course, test cut is going on, and so you can see, I can see the results in this page. Now, who is giving me all these results? I'm getting a lot of news about the test match, and I'm getting different websites and giving me different information. So who is giving me these search results? Definitely some programs that get executed in the background, and it is that program that is giving me all these search results. But I know that that program is definitely not executed by my browser. That program is definitely running on some server that Google have, and that program is capable to run and fetch some search results from Google's database, and then that data is sent back to my browser. So in a web application, yes, a lot of program get executed, and some of the program my browser run, and some of the program the Google server would run. Google or whatever website that you are browsing, they have a server, and that server is running some programs, and generally whatever programs that your browser run, they are called front-end programs, and whatever programs that the server runs, they are called back-end programs. A web application will consist of a lot of JavaScript, which your browser is capable of executing, right? And that's what happening when I just move my mouse cursor over here and I click here. Some programs are getting executed in my browser. I click on this mic button. Some programs are getting executed in my browser. I think it is my browser that is listening. And then when I search for something, I'm getting some search results that is of course produced by some program, and that program is definitely not in my browser. So like that, I click on the news, and news, worldwide news are being printed on my browser. I know my browser is not capable to do such things. It is done by the Google server. So let's talk about what a web application is. A web application basically consists of a client, an HTTP client, and in our case it's a browser, right? Let's call it a browser. And in my this is my laptop. I open the browser and I browse for google.com. Then what my browser did is it connected to some machine that is sitting somewhere else, maybe in Mumbai or maybe in Delhi or maybe outside India, I don't know. My browser is talking to that machine, and then this machine is responding to my browser with a web page. And this web page that I got, it consists of HTML file. HTMLs are the kind of code that browser understand, right? The design, whatever web page that you need to design, you would be designing them in HTML, and you would also use some style sheet, some CSS. CSS basically tells the HTML files that tells the browser that this is where Google logo should be kept, and just below the logo I want to give this styling for the search box. Below that, what I want to give is 2 buttons, right? So like that, basically the styling is provided by some CSS coding that your designers do, the web designers do, whoever developed this web page, right? They write the code in HTML and CSS. Every browser in the world are capable to understand an HTML and CSS files. A browser can run the HTML files and print it beautifully. On any browser can print it beautifully the way how the developer of the website coded it. And then it can also contain some images. Of course, the google.com logo is an image, right? And the image is definitely initially it is kept inside the Google server, and that image got downloaded to my browser. The google.co is one of that image which got downloaded to my browser, so it consists of that. And then I also told you that some scripts my browser execute, right? When I clicked on the search box with my mouse, some programs got executed within my browser. The server is not involved, I believe, in this case, because these search results are currently stored inside my browser history, and there is no way Google know, maybe Google know but yeah, technically there is no way Google know what are the things I searched so far, and this data is actually stored inside my browser history. and some programs is connecting to my browser history and fetching it, and such kind of programs always run in the browser itself, not on any remote server. So that is where, that's why I assumed this program is running in the browser. So, and if something is running in the browser, it has to be JavaScript programs, because JavaScript is the only program that browser understand. Your browser cannot run Python programs, it cannot run Java programs, it cannot run PHP programs. Your browser is not capable to execute any other programs, only JavaScript. So that's why I can confidently say my browser is executing something, it's gonna have to be JavaScript, right? So I know that. And of course all these files are initially kept inside the server. Whoever developed this website, some developers of Google developed all these web pages and stuff, they kept it inside the server of Google, and this server of Google is giving me all these files, and my browser is beautifully printing all those files in the browser, and that is when I see a good looking google.com page on my browser. Okay, great. So now I search for something. I search for something and search for test keyword, and then I clicked on the Google search button in my browser, and then what my browser did is browser will say again send a request to the server, and it will pass whatever message that I typed in. For example, test message. This is something I searched in my browser, clicked on Google search. Then what my browser does is it will post whatever data that I entered into the remote server, and what the remote server does is it will take that data. In this case it is the test message, that is what I typed in my browser, and Google server will get that message. Then based on this message it will execute a number of programs, a bunch of programs, and which would use this keyword as the input. Then probably Google have an internal database somewhere that they have kept, and inside that database they have a lot of data about different websites, and which are the websites on the internet that provide proper search result to me. All that data are stored inside a Google database. So some programs will download all that data from the database and then send it back to my browser, and that is when I can see the Google search result, right, with some pagination, page 1, page 2. There can be millions of pages in the Google search result that I am getting, right? It can be huge number of pages. So a number of programs are running on the server, and let's call them server programs for now, or sometimes this is also called backend programs, right? So some programs that the server runs, and then after they got executed, server will send some kind of response to my browser, and then I can see the data in the browser. So a web application consists of an HTTP client, such as a browser, and an HTTP server, and both server and client will execute some program. At the end, you as a end user, you never care about what it is, right? You browse to google.com and you can see google.com. You search for something, you get the search result, and that's what you care about, right? You don't care about how Google is doing all these stuff. That's not something for you to worry about, right? So a software or a web application is something like that. It consists of different components. It consists of a front end, which would contain a good looking UI built using HTML, CSS, and some good looking images, and then some programs that the browser might want to execute. Browser does not need to disturb the server for everything. Some of the things browser can execute itself, and Google developer is smart to know that. Google developer know that there are many things that browser can do, so the server does not need to be involved. So what he will do is he will develop a lot of front-end programs which is developed in JavaScript, and these programs he will make available to the browser. So browser will download those programs, and then based on the mouse click, based on different operation that you do, some programs get executed within the browser itself. And the programs are originally developed by Google developers, and in the request, your browser download those programs. So a real web application would consist of these many things. It consists of a UI, a good looking web page to be printed on the browser, and definitely it is developed with HTML, CSS. It would also contain some images, photos, or whatever, and then it would contain some front-end programs. And of course I know that this has to be JavaScript because the browsers today they support JavaScript, no other programming languages. So front-end programs are definitely written in JavaScript programming language. No other programming language can be used for that purpose. And then there will be some backend programs, and the backend programs could be written in any programming language. It could be Python, it could be PHP, it could be Java, or it could be any programming language that the server uses, and then that is not very very important. With a proper environment, right? Anyone can install Python inside the server and execute a Python program. Anyone can install PHP inside the server and execute a PHP program. Anyone can install Java on the server and execute a Java program. So right, a server means it's a machine like your laptop. So it is up to you what programming language you want to run. Whatever it is, a server, you can install proper environment in the server and you can run them, right? So server is capable to execute anything. It doesn't matter in what programming language your developer have developed the application. Server will be capable to execute that, including the JavaScript. Today, JavaScript is not just a programming language for the front end. JavaScript can also be used to develop the backend. So yeah. That is the idea. You can install necessary environment on the server and execute any kind of applications. It's not a big deal, right? So this is what a web application is, and a lot of things would be part of a web application, right? That's what it is. So today what we are going to do is we are going to set up some sample web applications, and this is going to be one single monolithic application that we are going to deploy today. Just to demonstrate to you, WordPress will take WordPress. I don't know whether you heard about WordPress. WordPress is a website. It's a website. It consists of all those things such as HTML file, CSS files, and then number of images, good designed images, JavaScripts that will run on the browser, and a bunch of programs which are developed in PHP programming language which will run in the background. So at the end, actually you can keep WordPress inside a remote server, and then you will be able to browse for the WordPress using a browser, right? So we are going to set up WordPress inside our AWS machine. That's what we will do. We're going to set up WordPress inside our AWS machine. So I will explain what I am going to do. I will today what I'm going to do is I decided that I want to run some web application inside a server machine, and I will use my AWS machine for this purpose. And now I need an application, right? Now I need an application, and I know since it is a web application, it has to contain HTML files, CSS files, and images, good looking images, a proper design to be printed on the browser. And then the server should also contain some JavaScript, because my browser might want to execute some JavaScripts, or the people whom I am serving this website, there may be multiple people who might want to browse for the website that I am building. Website is already built. WordPress is a free website that is already built by some expert developer. I am just downloading the WordPress files and I am putting them inside my machine. That's what I am doing. And there should be some JavaScript part of it, and there should be some server programs part of it, and these programs are developed in PHP. The developers of WordPress has used the PHP programming language to develop the WordPress application. So this is a PHP based application, WordPress is. And yes, these many things are part of the WordPress. and and so one thing is that in WordPress, everything is developed as a single monolithic software, so that you can keep WordPress inside the server and the browser can directly execute some PHP programs, and those PHP programs can generate some JavaScript files, and those JavaScript files browser will store and it will run. And that is the architecture of PHP, which is slightly different than which may be slightly different than the other applications. So today we will demonstrate with a PHP application, PHP based web application, WordPress. So this web application is not something that I am going to develop. WordPress is already a free software. Anyone in the world can download that software, and it consists of all these things. So all I will do is I will just download WordPress software from the internet. It's a already built, good looking website. All I need to do is put that inside the www.html, put that inside the server and make it accessible to all the browser all over the world. This is my idea. Once my server, the AWS server, start to run WordPress, then people all over the world using their browser, they will be able to connect to this server and then get the web page, see the web page on their browser, just like you see google.com. So this is my intention. I want to set up a web application inside an AWS server, and this is what I will do today. So first of all, let's forget about my laptop. Let me create a machine in AWS, and let me download the WordPress files inside that machine, and then configure this machine in such a way that anyone in the world using their browser, they can browse for a URL, maybe the IP address of this machine, and the browser will talk to the AWS machine, and the browser will speak to the AWS machine. Sorry. Come on. What's going on? Yeah, the browser will, when you browse for the public IP of your AWS machine, every AWS machine has a public IP. When you browse it, the browser will talk to the AWS machine, then send a response. The response is nothing but a good looking WordPress website. So this is what I am trying to achieve. So let's get started. So what I'm doing here is, yeah, WordPress, and then we will download WordPress to an AWS machine. So we are going to create an AWS machine, and in that machine I'm going to set up the WordPress. Before that, you can take a short break. Take a 5 minutes short break. Okay, we will continue in 5 minutes. Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Any questions? Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll continue after 5 minutes. Okay guys, so let's continue. Okay, before we set up WordPress, there are some networking concept that I want to discuss. Okay, okay, that we will discuss later, I think. Yeah, I think we will go ahead and download WordPress into an AWS machine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an AWS machine, and inside that machine I will log into that machine, and inside that machine I will download WordPress, and I will show you different files and folders inside the WordPress, which you don't necessarily need to understand. It is the responsibility of the developers to develop a web application, and you are responsible for deploying that application, right? That's what you do. So what I will do is I'm going to log into my AWS account, and inside my AWS account I will create a new Linux machine. Okay, so I already have some machines. Maybe I will create a new machine, right? Let me create a new machine. Whenever you want, you can terminate the AWS machine. You can choose to create a new machine. It's up to you. And let me use the region as Mumbai. Actually, it doesn't matter where you are. But yeah, if it is Mumbai, it will be slightly faster. That's why Mumbai. So I'm going to create a new machine. I'll launch the click on launch instance and select Ubuntu. And I will go with the T2 micro machine, whichever machine that come under free tier, so that I can save some money, right? Click on launch button, and then you can, once you created a key pair, you can use the same key. So in my case, I'm going to create a new key anyway. I'm going to call it Jan13. Jan13 is the name of the key that I am creating, and the key got downloaded to my laptop, and then I click on launch instance. Actually, you don't have to create a new key pair. Yesterday, if you created a key pair before, you can choose this second option, and then select the key from the drop down. So in my case anyway, I created a new key Jan13. So now click on launch instance. Now the machine is being launched. I just created a new AWS machine, and I will call this machine WordPress or something. I will give some name. You can name it, it's not a big deal. And name does not mean anything, right? Just a name for you to understand. So now the machine is ready, and the machine is in running state. The machine has a public IP. Now I can log into that machine from my laptop, and let me do that from my laptop terminal. Go to the downloads folder, and first of all chmod 400 jan13.pem, because it's a new key, I have to set the permission correctly. Then ssh -i, then the key file, username is ubuntu @ then the IP address of the AWS machine. This is the IP address of the AWS machine, and login. Right, I am successfully logged in, and I run the command sudo su -root to become the root user. So I am currently logged in as the root user. And now what I want to do is, right now I am working on the AWS Linux machine, and inside this machine I want to download WordPress. And like I said, WordPress is a web application software that is free to download, free to use, and there are millions of websites in the world that are actually running WordPress. Many websites that you are daily browsing, some of them are actually WordPress. So WordPress is a free software, and many people all over the world build their website based on WordPress. And let me download WordPress. So what I will do is, on my laptop browser I search for WordPress, download WordPress. Then that will take me to the WordPress website. And inside the WordPress website, I can see the option to download and install themselves. So you can just click this button, and then WordPress will start downloading, or no, it will take you to this particular page. You can click this button, download WordPress, then a zip file will get downloaded. Otherwise, if you click here, a tar.gz file get downloaded. When it comes to Linux, tar.gz is much more convenient and popular. So I go with this second link, which will download a tar.gz file. But if I click here, the file get downloaded to my laptop, right? That is not what I want. I don't want this file to be downloaded to my laptop. I cancel the download in my laptop. I don't need that. But actually what I wanted is the download link. I will just right click on my browser downloads page and then copy the link address. I got the WordPress download link, and I can use this download link from the AWS machine with some Linux command to download the WordPress file. Or you can also get this link by directly right clicking here and then copying the link address. So I got the download link. And now in Linux, if you want to download something from the internet, there's a command you can use. There are various commands. wget is one of them. Wget followed by the URL, the download URL, whatever URL that you copied from the WordPress website, or from after downloading WordPress, you can go to your browser downloads page and right click and copy the link address. In either way, this is the download URL. Anyone in the world browse it, WordPress will get downloaded to your laptop, and anyone in the world run this command from a Linux machine, the file get downloaded to that Linux machine. That's what I'm doing. I'm using Linux. I use the wget command against this URL. Then what happens is the file get downloaded to my AWS machine. And yes, it is downloaded. And I don't know where it is downloaded, right? It is going to be downloaded in my current folder. What is current folder? Yeah, when you are working on Linux, you always have a current folder, present working directory, or pwd. Run this command pwd to understand what is the folder you are right now. Yes, when you are working in Linux, you are actually working in a folder also, something I didn't tell you yesterday, but yeah. And when I run the ls command, while my pwd is /root is a folder, root is a folder that come under /. So I run the command ls space /root, I can see the content of /root, and if I simply run the command ls, I can still see the content of /root. By default, ls command or any Linux command, it take pwd as the path. So whether I run ls or I run ls space /root, I get the same result. Ls command, even if I don't provide /root, it would show me the content of /root, because /root is currently my pwd. And yes, that is where wget command will download the file by default. Any Linux command, it refer pwd to understand which folder it want to work on. You can use touch command to create a file. So I'm not mentioning /temps or present working directory. Pwd is the Linux command. Yeah, so when you are on a Linux command line, you always work on a folder. That's what pwd is. So if I run touch space test.txt, where this file get created, I did not specify /home/test.txt. That's what I was doing in the last session, but this time I am simply mentioning test.txt. So by default, it will be created in the pwd. Whatever your pwd is right now, it is /root. So I type ls space /root test.txt is there, or even I don't have to type ls space slash root, I can simply type ls because I am already inside slash root. So ls space slash root is same as ls right now because my pwd is slash root. And you can change your pwd. You can use cd command to go to right now, type the ls command. I can see there's a snap folder. I can type cd space snap, then snap would become my new pwd. So you can change your folder whenever you want. cd command lets you change your folder. And now you type the command ls, it would show you the content inside the snap folder because snap folder is your current pwd. Just wanted to show you. Okay, fine. So let me go back to slash root. That is where I downloaded WordPress. Let's come back to our topic, right? We were talking about WordPress being downloaded, and yes, it is downloaded. This is the file which got downloaded when I executed the wget command. And now it is time to extract this file. And in Linux, to extract a tar.gz file, this is like a compressed file, like a zip file, and you want to unzip it, you want to extract it. And in order to extract a .tar.gz compression, you can use this command. This command you will use a lot because tar minus xzvf followed by the file name. So this is the file name that I want to extract, and this command will help you extract this file. So just run the command. You can see something is being extracted. Yes, as expected. Now you run the ls command. I can see a folder called WordPress. So this compressed file is extracted into a folder called WordPress. Now let me go inside the folder WordPress and type the ls command. Then it would show me the content of the WordPress folder, and then there are different files I can see. A lot of them are PHP programs. You can see these are all different PHP programs. They end with .php extension because they are PHP programs, right? And PHP programs are generally named with .php extension, and many PHP programs are there. And then if you go inside this folder wp content, you can actually find some themes folder. If you go inside the themes folder, you would find that HTML files, CSS files, etc. In each of these folders you will be able to locate them. CSS files, HTMLs, and those things that browser will understand. And then a lot of PHP programs. So WordPress consists of all these things. And it would also, WP content will also consist of some JavaScript which would be later passed to the browser. So all these things are there. So this is a fully built web application that is ready to use, right? Anyone can download WordPress and use it. Okay, great. So we have successfully downloaded a web application and kept that web application inside the AWS machine. Now it is time to think about a place where you want to store some data. So we will talk about that. So what is data and where you will store the data, we will talk about that next. Data or the business data, it's actually whatever data that you are managing, it's actually the business data. So let's talk about the data. No, I didn't. I was using touch command to create the file, ls command to see the file. So no. Okay. All right. So So let's talk about data, right? Let's talk about data. So what is data? Data is some business critical information that every company will have to manage, right? Every company who deal with a software or who do some business, they have a lot of data that they want to deal with. Think about the Flipkart company, right? The Flipkart has many customers, and many customers sign up on the flipkart.com website every day. They would be entering their email id, their phone number, and a lot of their personal information, their card information, their credit card information, debit card information, different email id, their address, phone number, everything, right? They enter at the flipkart.com website, and then Flipkart want to store all that data at some data store. Similarly, a lot of product are being sold by Flipkart. So every product has an image, every product has a name, description, different seller information, who is selling this item. Then the product also has a detailed description, specifications, and stuff like that. So all these things are data, and you need a place to store this data. The order whatever your Flipkart customers are placing, millions of orders, every order history, who placed the order and when the order was placed, what were the items in that order. A lot of information need to be stored. So every company in real time want to manage a lot of data that your customer is entering on the website, or maybe some data that you are generating, right? Sometimes Flipkart want to, whatever data Flipkart already have, they want to process that data to generate some useful information. For example, uh, who is the key customers, the people, how many amount is purchased by the people between the age 20 to 30, how many was purchased between 25 to 30 age. Some business insight Flipkart will get if they manipulate this data and generate some useful information. So some data are directly entered by customers, some data Flipkart gather from some outside places, and they process the data and create more data. And there should be a place where you want to store all these data, and your applications will be communicating to this data store in a real time, right? You have a server. Assume the Flipkart company is using some server to run the Flipkart application, and every time the customer do something on the browser, customer try to create a shopping cart, customer try to log in, customer try to sign up, right? In their browser, somebody browse for flipkart.com, and they are clicking some button and they are entering some information, and they keep on sending a lot of information to the server. And whatever information that are relevant, some programs that run inside this server will be storing that relevant information into a data store permanently. And this permanent data store is very critical for the business. And when on the flipkart.com you try to log in, you open flipkart.com website in your browser, then you try to log into the website, you enter your email id and password, you click on the login button, the browser will send that information to the application, and then the application will run some programs. This program will connect to the data store, and it will check the data store for the email id and the password of the customer. And whatever email id and password that is already there in the data store is same as the one the customer have entered, then the customer get logged in successfully. Otherwise the application will send a message, error message, to the browser saying that please use the correct username and password, we could not locate your credentials, or something like that. So every company need a data store, and always remember, this data store is something your applications is constantly communicating with. To store some data, to read some data, a constant communication happens between the software application that your developer have developed, and also this data store that you have set up to store the data. So WordPress, in our case, consider WordPress as our application, and then WordPress definitely need a place, a data store where it want to store all the data. Not just WordPress, most of the applications It could be an application that your company have developed, or it could be an application like WordPress that you can download from the internet, a free web application. Whatever it is, all these applications, most of these applications, right, 99% of these applications need a data store where they want to store some data and read some data and stuff like that. So yes, WordPress also has that requirement. WordPress insists that you must create a database. Database may be created using MariaDB or MySQL. These are different database technologies. There is MS SQL, but that is not supported by WordPress. There is Oracle, that is not supported. There are different database solutions that is being offered today. Various solutions. We are going to learn the basics of some of them. Today we are going to talk about a MySQL database. We're going to learn about MySQL. MySQL is basically a relational database system. You can install a MySQL server on an AWS machine. You can create an AWS machine, and inside the AWS machine you can install the MySQL server software, and then you get the ability to create a data store inside this machine. Of course, it uses the hard disk of the machine internally, whatever. So you can actually create a database. That's what I'm going to do today. Inside the AWS machine, I'm going to install the MySQL software, MySQL server software, that gives me the capability to create and manage a database inside this machine, a MySQL database. And then I can configure my WordPress to speak to that database. I can tell WordPress, hey, this is the database that you can speak to, and when you want to store some data, or when you want to read some data, hey, this is where you can do it. So that is exactly what I am going to do. If I want to create a separate machine, I can do that, but I'm not creating a separate machine. I already have one AWS machine. In the same AWS machine, I will same machine where I downloaded WordPress, I'm going to install MySQL server, and then I will create a database. Then after creating a database, I will let WordPress connect to that database, and for that, for a secure access, I will create a username and password also in the database, and then WordPress would use the same credentials to talk to the database. So let me do this, forget about WordPress for some time, and let us set up a database inside our AWS machine, which your WordPress can use to store the data. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to, yes, go ahead. Not. Yeah, for any software, generally, whether it is MySQL or MongoDB, in a production environment, it is possible that you can actually set up database in one machine and run the application in another machine. Two machines can communicate each other using networking. So the database server will have an IP, WordPress will have an IP, they can communicate each other, and we will get to the networking part later. Today, we will go set up everything on the same machine, but not much. Yeah, it can be either alag machine, or it can be the same machine. There is no it's not important. You need a database, and in order to create a database, you should have a proper software that provide all the database facilities, and MySQL is one of them. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it doesn't matter. So right now, we are going with this use case. Later on we will talk about database, and then some of the air will become more clear. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do today. I already have an AWS machine, and in the same machine I'm going to install MySQL. I'm going to create a database, and I'm going to enhance the security. I also create a username and password. So anybody who want to connect to the database, they need a username and password. So this is what I'm going to do. All right, so let's get started. Set up a MySQL database in the AWS machine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up a MySQL database. So what I will do is, first I will log into the AWS machine. I got disconnected. Let me. I'm going to log into my AWS machine, and inside that machine I want to create a database. And to create a database, first of all you should install some software, MySQL or MongoDB, whatever database software, a server software need to be installed if you want to create a database. So in our case we are using MySQL. So first I should install the MySQL server software inside my AWS machine, and then only you will be capable to create a database, right? MySQL server software that allows you to create a database inside the machine where you install this server software, right? That's what this is all about. So this is my AWS machine, and I want to install the MySQL server. And in order to do that, for installing anything on my Ubuntu server, this is what I do. I use the command apt-get update and apt-get install, and later on today I will explain these commands, what apt-get update and what apt-get install is. So for now, for any software you ever want to install on Debian or Ubuntu based operating system, this is what you will do. First you will run the command apt-get update, and then you will run the command apt-get install followed by the software name, actually the package name, and I will tell you what is meant by package. So I want to install MySQL server inside the AWS machine, and our AWS machine is running Ubuntu as the operating system. On any server which is running any Ubuntu server, you want to install something, this is the sequence of commands. First you will run apt-get update, and then you will run apt-get install MySQL server. But I don't know what is the exact package name I should use here. I generally I do this, I search in Google. So I want to install MySQL server on Ubuntu. Simply search in Google MySQL server Ubuntu package. I don't know what is that exact package name that apt-get command will accept. So I search in Google MySQL server Ubuntu package, then it tells me it is MySQL server, MySQL minus server. That is the package name. So all I need to do is just execute this single command in my Ubuntu server. The command is apt-get install, then the package name. And what this apt-get, apt-get is pretty smart. Whenever you want to install any software in your Ubuntu server, you can use this syntax sequence of commands, apt-get update and apt-get install. Apt-get install followed by the package name, and this is the one single command I will run in an Ubuntu server every time I want to install a software. Let me just run it, and then apt-get is now telling me that this many packages are going to be installed. So yes, I wanted to install only MySQL server, but MySQL server depends on a bunch of software. So at the end, these many softwares are going to get installed. Are you ready with it? So apt-get is pretty smart. It understands the software what you are installing. It understands what are the dependencies of this software, and it would give you a complete list of dependencies that are going to get installed, and with a message, do you want to continue? Give yes, press y for yes and press enter. Then what apt-get will do next is, if I press enter button, what apt-get will do next is, it will download all these packages from some repositories on the internet and install them all in my Ubuntu server. So installation in Ubuntu. I didn't get your question. We will talk about apt-get in a bit. Yeah, right now it will download whatever is the latest, and yes, it is possible that you can mention the version also, but yeah, I'll talk about that later. It's done. So my SQL server is successfully installed inside my AWS machine, and in order to start the MySQL service, along with the MySQL server installation, a service will also get added to my machine, and I want to and the service name by default is MySQL. And now I want to start the MySQL service. I can use this command service MySQL start, and what this command basically does is, it would start the MySQL service inside my AWS machine. So MySQL is now running inside my AWS machine, or in other words, now my AWS machine is ready to create a new database, MySQL database, and that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to create a MySQL database. So after you install MySQL, just run this command MySQL from the Linux command line. Just run MySQL and type MySQL and press enter. Then you will notice that you got connected to an SQL command line, and you use different SQL queries in here to do whatever you want to do inside your MySQL databases. Even if you want to create a database, you want to delete a database, you want to create a table inside the database, you want to insert some data to the database, there are some queries that you can execute in this command line. There is a query called show databases, which would actually show you all the MySQL databases that are already existing inside your MySQL server. That is, right now it is the AWS machine itself. And right now inside my AWS machine, which I am going to call MySQL server from now, don't get confused. When I say MySQL server or when I say my AWS machine, it's the same. It is inside the AWS machine. I install the MySQL server, and now it is not wrong to call it a MySQL server. So this machine has become a database server, and I can use this command that will take myself to an SQL command line, which allows me to execute different MySQL queries. Show databases is one of them, and what this particular query does is, it would give me the list of databases that are currently available inside my AWS machine or the MySQL server. And if I want to create a new database, there is a different query called create database. Let's say I want to create a new database, and the name of the database that I want to create is WordPress. So I can use this command. Then what happens is, a new database get created with the name WordPress. I can give whatever name I want to give. I named it WordPress. And now you can run this query, show databases again, and now you can see a database got created inside this machine. So it is as simple as that. A simple query can create a database. And now the next thing what I want to do is I want to create a username and password who have access to this database. For enhanced security, I decided that I would create a separate username and password, and then that user will have full permission on this database. It's a good idea. So that's what I'm going to do. There's a query called create user. Then you can specify the name of the user. You can give any name, let's say WordPress user, right? Whatever name that you want to give. Create user, WordPress user @ localhost. So I can do this. Put in a single quotes is a good idea. I think you should put a single quotes. Yeah. Create user, then you specify the name of the user @ localhost. Every user is associated with a machine, and I will talk about that in a bit. So let me run this query. Identified by, then you can specify some password. Let's mention something like DevOps 123. So this is the query that you will run, right? This is the query that you will run in order to create a database user, and this is the name of the user that I am providing, and this is the password. And every user, MySQL user, is associated with a system, with a machine, and I will explain later what is localhost. So just let me run this query, and it says user is created. It's successfully created. It's done. Now the next thing, I created a database previously. Now I created a user, but right now, by default the user is not associated with the database, and I have to give permission to this user on that database. For that, there's a query called grant all privileges on. Then you can specify on which database you want to give permission. So in our case, the name of the database is WordPress, and yes, it's a good idea to put database name in a single quotes. Star means every table within this database I want to give permission to whom I want to give permission. So this is the user to whom I want to give permission to. So what this query does is, this query would give all privileges, that means full permission, to this user on this database, and just run this query, and it tells me the query is wrong. There is some syntax problem. Maybe sometimes the query changes based on the MySQL versions. Let me try to get the right query. MySQL query to grant all privileges, and that's what I want to do. Go to the MySQL 8. We are running MySQL 8. So let's see what is the query. Grant all on db.star to user @ localhost. Okay. You don't have to use the term privileges. That was for old MySQL versions. For the new MySQL versions, you can remove this keyword, privileges. Grant all on, right? This is good enough. So just run this query, and we got another error. I'm going to remove the single quotes from the database name. Yes, that worked. So this is the query that would give all privileges to this user on this database. Database name .star means every table within this database. So you are done. You created a database, you created a user, and with a password, and then you have assigned all permission to that user on this database. Now I am coming out of the command line. I want to go back to my Linux command line. You can simply type the keyword Qt, then you will come out of the SQL command line. You will come back to the Linux command line. That is great. So we created the database. I created the database and I came back to the Linux command line. And even if you want to go back again, you can run the command mysql. You will again be taken back to the SQL command line. You can type the SQL queries, it will work, and when you are done, you can type the command Qt. You will come out of the SQL command line, you will come back to the Linux command line. So that's great. So now we have created a database, a username and password, and the user is given full privilege on the database. And now we will configure WordPress, and I think we will do that in the next class, in the next session. So now I am root. So always work as root for first few days until you become comfortable with the Linux command line. You work as the root user. That's a good idea. And also those who are new to Linux, I already shared this course with you, but I think many of you have not registered on this website yet. Those who have registered, I had shared this access. So there is a Linux and networking course, and it has 2 videos over here. Watch them whenever you get some time. Take this first module and also complete the assignment. And did I share this document with you? I think I didn't. I will share this document with you today. Okay. All right. So anyone, any questions? Yeah. So we'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we will finish the WordPress setup. I'll also talk about apt-get command a little bit, so that you will understand how the installation happen in Linux. It's actually an important topic. And then that's it. We will complete setting up WordPress, and that's it. I will also talk about some networking basics. And yeah, cool. So thanks everyone. So see you tomorrow. Bye. Okay.